The music thumped low as Elijah stepped into the reception hall, careful not to scuff his freshly shined shoes. Warm light bathed the room in gold. White linen-draped tables sparkled with name cards in flowing cursive. Every seat had its place. Every guest had their welcome, except him, Elijah Moore. A young wedding planner asked, checking her clipboard. "Oh, her eyes darted across the room. Just a moment." He waited, swallowing the lump forming in his throat. He watched as cousins hugged, laughed, posed for pictures. A table full of groomsmen, of whom he knew raised their glasses to his brother, James. Finally, the planner returned. "We've got a spot for you," she said, lifting a grey metal fold-up chair. She led him to the far corner, behind the DJ booth, near a stack of unused speaker cases. No name card, no apology. He sat. The laughter from the main floor echoed louder from here, hollow in his ears. His view of the newlyweds' table was blocked by a balloon arch. From here, he couldn't even see his own brother's face. He smiled politely at passing servers but said nothing. He remembered their childhood, the baseball games, the sleepovers he wasn't invited to, the way James's parents, his adoptive parents, called him our miracle in public, then locked up conversations about race behind closed doors. Now, at the wedding, it was clear. Elijah hadn't been forgotten. He'd been placed deliberately. After a while, a guest wandered over, looked at the chair beside Elijah, and said, "Oh, this must be for the DJ's assistant." Elijah looked up, forced a half laugh, and said, "Guess I'm working tonight." Later, James raised a glass and thanked everyone who made this day perfect. Elijah didn't lift his dot, not out of spite, but because for the first time in years, he realized something. He had stopped expecting a seat at their table, and maybe that was the beginning, not the end. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Elijah sat behind the DJ booth, half listening to the muffled clinking of silverware and laughter from the family table he wasn't seated at. But the discomfort didn't begin tonight. It simply arrived, fully dressed, in white roses and matching cufflinks. He had been adopted at 7. At first he thought it was magic, a warm home, a real bed, a mother who smiled when she tucked him in, a father who shook his hand the day he arrived and called him son, and James, who was 2 years older and already had his own room, his own trophies, his own space in every photo on the mantel. Elijah's first framed picture on the wall came 6 months later, tucked behind a lamp. No spotlight, just presents. At school, teachers called them such a beautiful family. At church, people said how lucky Elijah was. But at home, subtle things grew loud. James could skip chores. Elijah had to be grateful. James failed math. One sit was a tough year. Elijah got a bit, wasn't trying hard enough. James got praised for being responsible. Elijah got called emotional. He learned to shrink in spaces where he wasn't invisible but never quite seen. Tonight, at the wedding, the family table had 12 seats. Elijah had counted them as he passed. Every aunt, uncle, cousin, godparent, even someone's new fiancé was placed around it like an heirloom arrangement. No one noticed his absence, or if they did, no one said a word. He remembered once, when he was 11, asking why he didn't look like anyone in the family photo. His mum smiled and said, "Love makes a family, not looks." He had believed her for a long time, but tonight, as cameras flashed and James kissed his new bride, Elijah felt the quiet truth settle in. Love without space isn't love at all, and The table had always been full, just never for him. ****. The music thumped low and steady as guests twirled in heels and loosened ties across the glossy dance floor. Elijah stood near his fold-up chair, holding a slice of wedding cake that tasted more like air than celebration. A woman in a glittering navy gown approached him, her glass of rose nearly empty. "You with the DJ?" she asked, smiling wide. "Can you play something fun? Like not all this moody stuff?" Elijah blinked. "I'm not," but she was already laughing. "Oh, I thought. Never mind. You just look like you've got good taste." He gave her a polite chuckle. Not too dry, not too cold. The laugh he'd practiced since middle school, the one that said, "Don't worry, I'm not offended, I'm manageable." She nodded and walked off, still convinced she'd paid him a compliment. Later, someone handed him a glass. "Cheers, man. You James's old college buddy." Elijah paused, then shook his head. "Brother," the guy blinked. "Oh, cool. I just didn't. Well, yeah. Congrats, man." He code-switched without realizing, dropped his voice just a little lower, smoothed his vowels, put on the safe version of himself, like armor, like habit. He drifted through the party as if underwater, smiling when expected, nodding when required. No one asked where he'd been seated. No one questioned why James hadn't mentioned him in the speech. No one asked if he was okay. The DJ played a slow jam, and couples spilled onto the floor. Elijah watched them sway under twinkled lights strung like fake stars. His cake was now a warm mess on the napkin in his hand. Behind the smile, behind the laugh, something burned low. Not rage, not yet, but the unmistakable heat of recognition. He didn't belong here. And maybe he never did. ****, the clink of a spoon against glass quieted the room. James stood, tall and radiant in his custom tuxedo. The microphone gripped like a lifeline. His bride beamed beside him, her hand lightly resting on his back. Elijah straightened a little in his fold-up chair behind the DJ booth, the edge of his plate digging into his lap. "I want to thank everyone," James began, his voice steady. "This room is filled with so much love. Family, friends, my people." He glanced across the sea of smiling faces, parents, childhood neighbors, golf buddies, fraternity brothers. "I wouldn't be the man I am without the people who stood by me. My brother from college, Kyle, who's always had my back. My uncle Mike, who showed me what real work ethic looks like. My dad, my hero." Laughter, a few people wiped away. Tears. Elijah's face stayed still. His chest didn't rise. He felt oddly outside his own body, like watching someone else's movie unfold in slow motion. Not once did James say his name. No, Elijah. No, adopted brother. Not even a nod toward the back of the room where he sat alone. When the crowd rose to give a standing ovation, Elijah stayed seated, clapping slowly, mechanically. Even the DJ looked over at him for a second, an awkward glance that tried to offer pity and failed. Later, while Elijah stood by the drink table, an older aunt approached. Her perfume smelled of lavender and old pages. "You know he loves you," she whispered, almost apologetically. In his own way, Elijah looked at her, smiled politely, but said nothing, because what was there to say? Love with conditions. Love that doesn't see you. Love that forgets your name in a room full of people. That wasn't love. That was performance. And this time, silence wasn't strength. It was the sound of something finally breaking. Elijah stared at the untouched slice of wedding cake on his plate. White frosting, delicate pink flowers piped in perfect symmetry, like the rest of the evening, beautiful on the surface, hollow underneath. He thought back to 6 months ago, when James first announced the engagement in the family group chat. "Anything I can do to help?" Elijah had texted. No reply. 2 days later, he left a voicemail. "Hey James, I had an idea for a photo display, like a wall with family pics from childhood up. Could be cool for the reception." Silence. "Also, I know someone who does great catering on a budget, just saying. If you haven't locked it down yet." Again, nothing. He left 3 more messages over the following weeks. One where he nervously pitched a playlist idea. Another where he offered to design a small tribute for their late grandmother. And one final voicemail that simply said, "Just checking in. Hope everything's good." Each one a thread flung out into space. None of them caught Dot at family dinners that followed. James nodded toward him, but didn't really see him. "There." Mother brushed his shoulder and said, "You know your brother is just so busy." So Elijah stopped asking. He helped set tables, picked up a drunk uncle from the airport, smiled in every photo, laughed at every story. He became the invisible glue needed, but never named. And still, when the big day arrived, no call, no seat, no name in the toast not forgotten, just conveniently excluded. Elijah took a long sip of water, steadying his hands. Behind him, the music pulsed back to life. He wouldn't leave tonight angry, but he wouldn't leave unchanged either, because now silence wasn't peace. It was a record, and he was done erasing himself from it. Asterisk, asterisk. Elijah stood just outside the venue's glowing doors, the distant thump of bass echoing from within. Laughter drifted into the night like confetti floating, carefree, unreachable. His hand hovered over the handle of his car for a moment before he turned back, walking toward the curb instead. The air was cooler now. Honest, he pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder, and stared at the blinking red dot. A breath, then another, and then, episode 12, Fold-Up Chairs, Unfolded Truths. His voice was steady, but his chest tightened with every word. Tonight, I sat behind the DJ booth at my brother's wedding. Everyone else had a place card, a table, a welcome. I had a fold-up chair and silence. A pause. He could hear the leaves shifting in the breeze. This isn't about being dramatic. It's about being made to feel invisible by the people who claim to love you. It's about being tolerated, not embraced. About being asked to show up, but never fully allowed in. Images flooded back. James's speech, the ant's whisper, the wine glasses clinking like nothing was wrong. I used to think that silence kept things peaceful, that if I just stayed agreeable, maybe one day I'd earn a spot at the table. But I've realized something. Silence is not grace. Silence is not maturity. Sometimes silence is survival dressed in shame. The words rolled out now, a dam finally broken. So here I am, saying it out loud. Not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, because someone else might be sitting in their own fold-up chair, wondering if they're crazy. If they imagined the exclusion, you didn't, you're not. Elijah hit stop. He didn't cry. He didn't need to. That night, as he uploaded the recording to his modest but growing podcast feed, he felt the kind of peace that doesn't come from being quiet, but from finally being heard by morning. The episode had more comments than anything he'd ever posted. Stories, thanks, echoes. He didn't need James to call, because this time, Elijah wasn't asking for space. He had already taken it, and what he built from it would no longer be foldable. Asterisk 3 months later. The room was alive with warmth, not opulence, but intention. A string of golden lights glowed above a long table lined with mismatched chairs, each one sturdy, each one claimed. There were no fold-ups, no DJ booths, just stories. Elijah stood at the head of the table in a tucked-in navy shirt, sleeves rolled. Voice steady, he scanned the guests, young men and women of color, teenagers from local high schools, first-gen college students, some shy, some bold, all of them hungry for space. Each plate bore a handwritten name tag, each seat a small folded card that read, "You belong here." He hadn't told anyone, but this dinner, hosted by his new non-profit Belonging and Beyond, was scheduled for the exact same date as James's anniversary. Not out of spite, but to reclaim the day. As the meal settled into soft laughter and light chatter, Elijah rose with his glass. When I was growing up, I learned that family didn't always mean recognition, that being present didn't always mean being seen. He glanced toward the far end, where a shy 14-year-old boy in a worn hoodie looked up, wide-eyed, at a wedding not long ago. I sat behind the DJ, on a chair they didn't even bother to unfold all the way. That night, I left quietly, but I found my voice on the other side of that silence. Around him, the room hushed, the kind of quiet that listens. Tonight, every single one of you has a seat, a voice, a story that matters. Because the chair they didn't give me, he paused, smiling, helped me build a bigger table. The applause wasn't thunderous. It didn't need to be. It was deep, real, held in the grateful glances and unspoken nods. Elijah sat down, not behind anyone, at the center of his own story, and finally, at a table wide enough for others to rise with. Him.